welcome to a new episode of The Brand Called You. I am Arini and I'm with Ashutosh Garg. And today we are talking about how to write your personal vision and mission statement. Hello, sir.
Hi, Rami.
We have all heard about vision and mission statement for companies, but for a lot of our viewers, this is the first time they're hearing about personal vision and mission statement. So, firstly, I would like to ask, what's the difference between vision and mission?
Okay. So, these are two words that are used all the time by companies, all the time by CEOs. That what is the vision of my company and what is the mission of my company. And a very simple way to understand the difference between vision and mission is a vision is where you want to get to, and a mission is how you get there, right? So if you've got a company and we say that the brand called you should become the best known OTT in the world, right? That is a vision. You can add to that vision by saying TBCY should become the best known OTT in the world, covering multiple skills from entrepreneurs to professionals to people in the art world to any other kind of skill. The mission would then become that by the 31st of March 2020, we must have at least 500 recordings.
Right.
Number two mission can be by this so and so we should be using technology of this kind. Third mission can be by so and so date we must be shooting and recording in 6 different cities around the world.
Right.
Next one can be by same so and so date we should be available to be seen on so many different platforms around the world. So the vision is where you want to go, and the mission is what steps you want to take to get there. That's a simple way of explaining.
Right. That explains a lot. Now, why should I have a personal vision and mission statement? It makes sense for a company because they need to be guided, and there are different individuals. But here I am. I know what I want and anything. So why should I put efforts in writing these things down?
Very interesting question. So let's step back a little bit and say that you, Aruni Chowdhury, are a brand. So brand you is Aruni Chowdhury, and everything that you say, do, interact with, perceived by other people are things that are creating impressions about you in the minds of whoever your audience is. So it could be friends, it could be spouse, it could be parents, it could be family, it could be employees, it could be employers, it could be the community. Everywhere we are interacting with, there are certain perceptions that are created. As you progress down the line over the years, those perceptions start to get hardened, understood. And there are so many people, in a simplistic way, if I was to put down, where you would say, in my resident welfare association, this person would be a great president to have.
Right.
But that person is too flaky. I don't think that individual can be the president of an association.
Right.
Or you talked about politicians, some individuals cannot be good political leaders. Some people you depend on. Same thing happens with corporate leaders. Right? So, therefore, we are positioning ourselves as individuals in the minds of everybody who we keep touching. Therefore, now what becomes necessary is that from our own perspective, we now have to start thinking, how do I wish to be perceived? Do I wish to be perceived by the time I'm 35 as the best tech individual in the company that I'm working? Do I wish to be perceived as by the time I'm 35, I want to be in general management in the company and on the fast track? Do I want to be perceived as a person who's building an absolutely incredible company? If I'm a professional like a doctor or a lawyer, by the time I'm in my mid 30s or early 40s, do I want to be at the peak of my career? Right? Therefore, it's very important to define. If I'm an author, um, do I want to, by the time I'm 40, have at least two books that have sold more than 30,000 copies? Right? So these are all the things that we want to be able to talk about. And when we say that I want a personal vision statement, at every stage in life, and none of these statements are static.
Right.
It's not that if when I'm 25, uh, I'd say that this is where I want to be, and when you get to 60, you say, but my vision is exactly the same as it was 35 years ago, which is just not viable or feasible or practical. Because every few years, your own perspectives change, your environment changes, your aspirations change, the people who depend upon you, they change, and therefore where you want to be is also therefore dynamic and keeps changing. So therefore your vision statement is important, that 3 years from now, this is where I wish to be, right? So you may turn around and say that I'm an entrepreneur. By the time I am 33 years old, I would expect to have sold two of my businesses and made 1,000 crore rupees, right? Just a vision thing that you could have. Mind you, vision also has to be not a pipe dream, but it has to be realistic, right? Once you've said that, then you start to define that what are the steps I want to take to be able to get there.
Right.
So my mission in the next 12 months is to have a great company that will be able to get me to my 1,000 crore vision in the first 3 years or 4 years, whatever you defined. And therefore, the first year I must achieve this, second year I must achieve this, third year I must achieve this. Now, the mission can then be based on what do I do in the first year for myself, but you got to keep adding in all the people you need to be able to work with you. So what kind of management teams do you need? How much money do you need to raise? What is the geography that you want to be able to cover, etc., etc. That's what I would cover in my mission statement. So, as an individual, what are the things I want to do? And for my mission, what are the things that I want to be able, steps that I want to take to get where I want to be?
Correct. So you just explained how to go about writing the vision statement first.
Correct.
Which means that what would I like to become or be after a while, and the mission statement. What are the steps I must take to get there?
I also said is that the vision and mission statement is dynamic.
Yes. So this was my second question.
Okay.
So does vision change as often as the mission does? Because a vision seems to be like more of the static kind, and mission changes every once in a while.
Correct. So I wouldn't say static. I would say dynamic.
Okay.
So the vision has to be dynamic, which means that every few years, you as an individual must review what your vision is. In the fast changing world that we have today, if I was to say that my vision is going to remain static 10 years from now, I would probably be living in the past 10 years later. Right? So therefore, I have to keep on changing my vision. Where do I wish to be? And once that changes, and again, what I'm not suggesting is that my vision should not change every month, because then you don't know where you want to go. You're being then very, very uncertain in your mind and changing where you wish to be every month. And therefore, you seem to be, looking at a moving target all the time. So therefore, keep reviewing your vision every few years, your personal vision, and the mission will change more often, because the mission will be dependent on the steps that you are taking to get to your vision, and that will keep on changing, because you will do two things, find you're not being able to achieve those,
Hmm.
then you want to course correct
Correct.
and do something different.
Correct.
So the mission may change every year, your vision may change once in 3 or 4 years. And I'm talking about this as a personal brand.
Okay. So how important is, though you mentioned it earlier in the introduction that it is important in your personal branding. Now that I have a better understanding about what my vision is and what my mission is, how does it impact my personal brand? I mean, do I get to control the personal brand? I just want to.
So, personal brand basically means how others perceive you,
Correct.
and conversely, how you want others to perceive you, right? So it's always two-way process, like communication.
Correct.
Communication is important. If I'm speaking to you, that you should be able to understand what I'm saying, and conversely, I should be able to understand what you expect to hear from me.
Correct.
Right? Otherwise, it's a one-way street. So the personal brand is exactly the same. How do you want to be seen by others, and how do you want others to see you? And since these two, your personal brand is creating perceptions, your vision, your mission is critical to be able to communicate the message
Hmm.
of your perception.
Right, right. One of the things that struck out when I was reading your book, and I just remembered it. You mentioned that one of the great exercises to do is to write your own obituary. And to tell you for a fact that I've actually tried to write my own obituary. It was tough. It was funny, but it was quite satisfying. So I would like your.
So, writing your own obituary is probably one of the most difficult things to do,
Right.
but it is also uh, one way of determining what you have worked for and how do you wish to be remembered, right? So, do you want to be remembered as a good father, or a good son, as a good spouse, as a good manager? Do you want to be remembered as a billionaire? Do you want to be remembered as someone, who did all kinds of things for the community? Do you want to be remembered as a very selfish man? These are all things that people perceive you by. And I remember this old story of, when in the mid 90s in Davos, I was listening to an 80-year-old rabbi, and he said to the big audience that he has met dozens of chief executives who are lying on their deathbeds. And he says, not one person ever said to me that I wish in my life I was a bigger company CEO. I wish I had made more money, or I wish I had more power. He says, everyone said, I wish I was a better man. I wish I was a better father. I wish I was a better husband. So that gets you to start thinking that in the ultimate, when you come to the end of your life, which is when you start thinking of what your obituary will be, how do you wish to be remembered? And that is, if you're able to write something out or put down some thoughts, that's one interesting way to start writing out some parameters for your personal brand.
One last question. A lot of our viewers might be skeptical about planning it too hard. Uh, so, what would you say a person like, let's say, a friend of mine who would say life is just a sum of accidents?
Correct.
So, what would you tell my friend who says this?
Yeah, well, he may say life is a sum of accidents. Another friend says life happens.
Right,
Right?
right.
Well, that is generally true,
Hmm.
but life can be much better if you had some planning in it.
Correct.
And I don't think I've come across a single individual who can say, I have zero aspirations. Whatever happens tomorrow morning is acceptable to me. I will go wherever I feel like going. If God has destined that I'm going to have an accident, so be it. I will stop working because if God has destined, or if my destiny is, or my life is that I'm going to have $1 billion that I'm going to win in a lottery. That may happen. I used to have a friend. Very interesting story. In 1999, he just decided that in 2000 the world will come to an end. He read somewhere, and then he read about the Mayan civilization, and he read something in China, and he says everybody has gone and said the same thing, that in so and so year the world is going to come to an end. So he said, I'm going to stop working. He gave up his job. My age group person started doing all kinds of things that he wanted to do. 19 years later, he's still waiting for the world to end. But in the last 19 years, he's completely wasted his life. So yes, life happens, but you have to prepare and plan. And that is all that a personal brand is about. Because if you were to relate this with, say, the big company that you work for or the business that you are trying to build, and you say, well, every day is going to be a new day for me, which it is. But why do I need to plan for my company? Let's put the product out. If something happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
Right.
That's absolute guarantee for you to be fired the very next day, because I don't think any company will accept it. And your personal brand is no different from the brand of your employer's company or your own company's brand. So please make sure you do not take this fatalistic view of saying whatever will happen to me will happen, because it won't.
Thank you so much. That was really educative. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You podcast. Be sure to visit tbcy.in to join the conversation, access show notes, and discover fantastic bonus content. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Simply search for the Brand Called You. Thank you, and see you next week.